started. Awesome. So I want to welcome everybody to Thursday Thoughts. And it is, if you weren't sure, if you're not 100% sure, it's September the 8th. September the 8th, 2022 with SCAMLE. And so tonight's Thursday Thoughts, I'm really excited. I want to first of all say thank you to SCAMLE for sponsoring these events. We have a lot of exciting stuff coming up. And so we hope that everyone on the call tonight is a member. I wanted to introduce myself before we talk any further about the work at hand. Again, my name is Sarah Evanson Atkinson, and I am the Professional Learning Director for SCAMLE. I am an instructional coach, a teacher, a mom, a sister, a daughter. I do all the things just like you. And really, middle school and the middle level is my passion. And so I got hooked up with this cool crew, and so we've been trucking along ever since. So really excited. I don't know if Dr. McDonald is going to have an opportunity to jump on tonight's call. However, he does serve as the executive director of the organization, and we do want to say thank you to him and the organization, the entire board, for their continued support of these professional development offerings. You know, it takes a team. It takes a team of folks working together to bring together this kind of high quality professional development. And so I just want to say thank you officially to SCAMLE. The call for presenters is currently out. So please check out our website at scamle.org. Remember that our big event happens in March in Myrtle Beach. And so if you are interested in presenting, maybe you've never presented before, or you'd like to present with a friend, or you have a colleague who's doing some really cool stuff, please encourage them to apply to present. We try to bring the latest, greatest from across the state to our members, and you would make a great addition. So please consider again visiting scamle.org for more information and to present. If not interested in presenting, that's totally okay. Registration is open. Early bird registration is open for the conference, and we hope to see you there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Be sure that you follow us for all the latest information. We have some new podcasts, which will be dropping very, very soon. All right, so tonight, we're getting to the good stuff. Ready? Today's work. Remember that Thursday work is an exercise in reflection and an exercise in thinking. Now, during our time together, we will cover a considerable amount of ground during these Thursday Thought webinars. And so remember that your job is really to think and to reflect deeply. It would be impossible for us to shift entire mindsets, to shift hearts, but we can leave you with little tidbits, which we can plant seeds in these hours so that you can maybe shift your thinking. And so hopefully those small shifts will grow into big changes that will serve our students moving forward. So I'm going to turn it over very, very soon to our special guest for tonight. I'm so excited he's with us. He's one of my favorite people to have on for Thursday Thoughts. But I want to start us off with this idea. Special education is a service, not a place. Think about that for a second. Special education is a service, not a place. It's not a place we send kids who can't do what other kids can do. It's not something that you're relegated to and you can never escape. It's not prison, y'all. Special education is a unique set of service. I channel my inner guru here. Special education is a unique set of skills to reach all students, right? It is not a location. It is not a spot. It is not a place where we lock the door and throw kids away. And we have to start there if we're going to be really good at reading an IEP, meeting the needs of all students, and remembering that every single child in every single one of our seats, regardless of what they are great at, regardless of what they have limitations upon, whether it doesn't matter if they're rich, poor, what color their skin, it doesn't matter. We have it within us to be able to reach every single one where they are every single day. Now, that maybe sounds like magic, and maybe that's a far, far goal, but I brought the best to you tonight. There's nobody better than Adrian Goodman. He's joining us here tonight, and he's going to talk to us about all things special education. So please make him feel welcome. Adrian, how are you?
I'm good. I think we're done. I think you covered everything.
Oh, good. Okay, I covered everything good. So we're all good for tonight, y'all. Good. All right, so Adrian Goodman is going to join us, and I'm going to turn it over to him in just a second. Let me escape out of here. I will be manning the chat and kind of hanging out in the background. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. And I know Adrian will be able to answer them certainly. So, but again, I'll be hanging around here. Remember that I also have, for everyone, I have links to the folder. And so you will leave here with a Google folder that's full of really useful information that you'll be able to take back with you. So no later on sending us an email asking, oh, where was that piece of paper? You'll have it all before you leave here tonight. All right, please enjoy Adrian. Welcome aboard. We're so happy you're here.
All right. Good evening, everybody. And like Sarah said, in the folder, you're gonna have this entire PowerPoint. And I would highly encourage everyone to take it and present it. It's yours. You know, everything's on it. Especially if you work on teams in your school. This information is very important because a lot of our students are in the gen ed classroom. And first things first, you got to look at working together as a team with communication and actually compromising, cooperating, doing things together for the needs of your student. Because I've had some interesting comments while I'm talking. I'm gonna share the screen. I've had some interesting, I think we're good right here. Can everybody see? Let's see, let's put it right here. I think we're good to go. Can everybody see that with the thumbs up? There we go. All right, so tonight we're gonna start off talking about basically how to read an IEP. That's gonna be basic information straight through. The most important part is how to use the information that you have in the IEP. And judging by the way the schools are made up now, I'm a teacher. This is my 23rd year as a special education teacher. I spent my first 20 years teaching self-contained in the middle school and also resource. Started off with students with emotional disabilities, which at the very beginning, back in early 2000s, that included autism. They had them all in one class. And they transitioned from that because that really wasn't the best fit. And then as I got older, I added on certification, of course, and we started having specific learning disabilities, students with intellectual disabilities. And we noticed that some of the things we noticed before COVID, some of the things that we were doing in the self-contained classroom, those needs can be met in the gen ed classroom, you know. And when COVID hit a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, we noticed that those same practices do work in the gen ed classroom if you have to do it. You know, think about the adaptive programs that we use for everybody. Students with special needs can use them as well. I like to first say you can have a disability and not be in special ed. You got to have a disability and a need to be in special ed. So you can have a disability and be sitting in the classroom. You may be a slow learner, but that's not a disability. You got to have a need, a discrepancy. And tonight we're going to just look into it. Like Sarah said, special education is a service, not a place. I teach in Richland School District 1. And I promise you, you're going to hear that line every day. And we have meetings. We always say special education is a service, not a place. The way I interpret it is we can serve you at anywhere in that school building. You know, behavior may tick you off sometimes, but you can have some supports and behavior as well to keep you in the classroom. But you can get any service from special education inside the gen ed classroom with the correct supports. Now, this is a hyperlink. So when y'all present it to y'all faculty, your team, you're going to click on this hyperlink, and this is a cool quizzes game that you can play, and it's going to cover all the basics part of the IEP. Just see do you know the different parts, and you can have some discussions on those. Let's go back. Special education is a service, not a sentence. So we can go to many meetings to talk about placing students in special ed. The whole goal is not for them to stay in special ed. That is not the goal. The goal is to transition them back with their grade level peers, because once they get out of school, they're going to be living with their peers, older and younger, in society, trying to be productive. I got a little video clip, Sarah, point of personal privilege. We got a couple of video clips we're going to look at, but
hey, that's what I'm talking about. So far, it looks like you and I have been talking before this. I mean,
know,
special education is a service, not a sentence, man. Like, you were right. Like, drop the mic. Like, maybe I'm on something.
I'm telling you, it's those minions behind you, the minions that's got us going wild tonight. So let's cross our fingers and let's see if our video will play. We need something.
Okay, guys.
So are we good?
I know we're all on board with the gifted program.
There you go, sounding like an old locomotive. Honey, you've got to walk at a normal pace.
I think some of the kids who aren't in the gifted program are feeling left out.
Agreed. And they took all the talking kids, so now I have to talk.
Well, this is nothing we can't fix. We just need to make sure all the kids who aren't in the program are still on track to be successful, you know, go to college, do great things.
You don't have to go to college to be successful.
No. Oh my God, no. I didn't mean that. I'm just saying.
I, for one, love the program. I feel like a blend of Robin Williams and Dead Poets Society and, well, Robin Williams and Patch Adams.
Didn't all those kids in Patch Adams die of cancer?
Well, the real cancer is ignorance.
The real cancer is cancer.
Look, there's nothing wrong with the gifted program itself. We just need to organize it better so that the regular kids, the ungifted kids, the re-gifted kids.
Let's lift up the other kids.
Yes, that.
Look, if the program is making the kids feel bad, I don't think it's worth it.
Guys, there has to be a way to improve the experience for the other kids, you know? Make them feel special too.
I'm sure you figure it out, Janine. You're in the gifted program, right?
I was.
All right. So most of the time, gifted program, let's just take gifted out, because, you know, we really call, I'm a special ed teacher, but when you talk to us in a formal setting, we teach kids exceptional children. Exceptional is a huge spectrum, you know, and lo and behold, gifted falls under it. But as far as, you notice how labels kind of drive how you treat children? In this clip, it kind of is a parody, of course, but if you sit in a faculty meeting or a team PLC and you're talking about the students looking at their STAR test scores, any kind of standardized test, you'll fall into that trap of, does he have an IEP? Does she have an IEP? Does she need an IEP? Does she need a 504? Does he need a 504? And then you'll say, oh, that's Mr. Goodman's student. Or, well, that student may need to be referred to the MTSS committee. You know, so this parity does come out to me, and it kind of tells us what we're dealing with inside of the school, inside of when we're talking to our kids and talking to other teachers, because with our students, they know if you're just tolerating them in the classroom. And we are, after tonight, we're really going to be focused on the whole team aspect of it. So let's look at the IEP. The IEP is just simply how we serve the needs of our students. Remember, I said a student in special ed, you got to have a disability and you need to have a need, a discrepancy either in your learning or in your behavior that causes you to miss instruction or not get instruction. So if a student with an IEP actually has a program and that student has an entire team. These are all the disabilities that are listed under IDEA, which is our federal mandated law. Of course, the most difficult one that I see to deal with would be students with emotional disturbance or emotional disability. But right now, what we're really looking at are students with specific learning disabilities, because they could be strong in some areas and not too strong in the other areas. But these are all the disabilities that are listed under IDEA. Now, if you have any questions about these acronyms, if you throw them in the chat, and I will gladly discuss them with you. Now we're looking at the IEP team. Now you're looking at the right holder, which is the parent. The parent has to be a part of the team. We're going to speak specifically for middle school age children. So the parent controls the IEP. You got to get parental consent. You got the general ed teacher, which I think is most of everyone in here. You got the special education teacher, and you got my favorite person, the LEA. The LEA is a little different. Let me try to see if I could get some eye contact here. The LEA is a very important person in the meeting. If you have an LEA, it's usually going to be, it's got to be your administrator in the building. They have this magical training that they can solve all the problems in the meeting, because their job is to provide a consensus of whatever you're discussing. Case in point, if you're ever invited to an IEP meeting and you do not agree with what's going on in the IEP meeting, that is your right not to agree. The parent cannot agree. So it's the LEA's job to sit there. I wouldn't say mediate the meeting. They're going to make sure, first of all, we're in compliance with the IEP. Second of all, got to come to a consensus, because everything is a team decision. So the general ed teacher is very important, because y'all are telling us how this student is interacting, reacting with their grade level peers, age level peers. So we're not going to agree all the time. So the LEA will be the person to make sure we're following the law, but also at the end of the meeting, make sure we have some kind of consensus. And you can agree to disagree. That's a great way of, like, not arguing. Because I know y'all never been involved in an IEP meeting where you just argue all the time. That doesn't really happen. That happens mostly on TV, not in real life. Okay, unless you're trying to put them out of school, then you're gonna have a real big issue. And this last bullet, anyone who directly works with the needs of that student can be part of the IEP team. Speech, occupational therapy, physical therapists, all those are part of the IEP team. They're required to be at the meeting. You cannot have an IEP meeting without these people present. It can't happen. One reason is because, remember I told you with the LEA has to have consensus. So the LEA has to be able to hear from the parent, the school, the classroom teacher, the team lead, which is special ed teacher, and anyone else who directly affects the student. Do we have any questions?
I do. I have a question, Adrian. So what's the difference between an IEP meeting and, like, I just want to talk to mom and dad about what's going on with Johnny in the classroom, like a regular parent conference? Is there a difference? Can I have a regular parent conference with a student who has an IEP?
You sure can, and I would definitely recommend it. If a parent comes to me and says, hey, I want to meet all my child's teachers, and it's not an IEP issue, which it doesn't have anything to do with, we'll get to it, the accommodations or service minutes, then you can have a parent teacher conference. I know for a fact we got at least one school council on here. I would definitely direct their parents, hey, let's just have a parent teacher conference. I'll come to the conference, but you can have all your child's teachers there, and they can give you updates. You probably get a lot of the same information you would get in the IEP, but you can meet the teachers and get regular information without calling a IEP team meeting. We call them special reviews.
Yeah, I just think I didn't mean to be silly with my question, but I think that a lot of times what happens is, as soon as as soon as a practitioner sees a child with an IEP, they think, oh gosh, it's hands off and I can't call the parent and I can't do this and I can't do that. Everything has to go through the case manager, when the reality is that they are a student in your class who are getting instruction from you. And so that is, their parents still are the parents of anybody else. And so I just think that's an important point to illuminate, because I see it all the time. And I know
Oh,
you
yeah.
do too.
Oh, yeah, you see it. You do see it a lot, and that goes back to that team aspect. Like we are a team. I can't if your child is in band and we give an accommodation for extended time in band. What does that look like? So or chorus, or you want to meet with the language arts, math, and science teacher. It will be more beneficial for you to get your questions answered at a parent-teacher conference than at an IEP meeting, because we're not gonna make any changes to the IEP. You just want to know how your child is doing in those classes. So one of the most important parts of the IEP would be the present levels of academic functioning. Where the child is at when they're coming into your room. The benefit of having an IEP is at any time, you're really not going to get surprised at what level they're basically on. There's some outliners, but we're going to give the gen ed teacher exactly where that child is at. May not give you a grade level equivalency, but we'll tell you what skills they're bringing to the table. In reading, math, writing, behavior, any kind of social function. You're going to get that. And that's the first part of the IEP. So most of the time, gen ed teachers don't know the ask for this, but if that child is in your class, you have access to the entire IEP. I would recommend, when you get a chance, read where they're at, because we're going to tell you their strengths, and we're also going to tell you their needs. And remember the first slide was special ed education as a service, not a place. Some of those needs can be met in the gen ed classroom. You don't need to pull them separately because the big myth would be if I told you that you are falling behind in 6th grade math. So to help you catch up, I'm going to remove you from the 6th grade math class. Who that 6th grade math teacher is a specialist. She or he is a specialist. So to catch them up, I'm going to take them out the specialist class and put them in a setting where they're going to be 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students in. And I'm going to catch them up to the kids who are in that 6th grade math class. First of all, that never made sense to me. Till I got older, I really started speaking out. That doesn't make sense. If you can keep that child in that curriculum and then support them outside of that class, that's the most effective way. And basically, that's what really started this inclusion push. You're finding out that the students can go into the gen ed classroom and get supplemental services. Like you can get pulled out for a resource, or your teacher comes in and can provide accommodations to everyone, because we're looking at the MTSS model. It's tiered systems. Anyway, if 20% of your class isn't getting it, that's not a tier 3 problem, it's a tier 1 problem. So everybody can benefit from accommodations and extra support. So the first part of IEP you're going to look at is the present levels, their strengths and their weaknesses. Just stop me at any time if you want to slow up. Now we get into the annual goals. To have an IEP, you got to have goals. And what we do is it's like you're telling a story. Like when I'm working with teachers, because I'm an autism itinerant, so I get to work with a lot of teachers and a lot of different students. And sometimes when we're writing IEPs, you want an IEP, it doesn't have to be long, you want it functional. So you're telling a story with the IEP. The first part of the story are the present levels, strengths and weaknesses. Then after you get that, you look at you take the needs, and then you go immediately to the goals. How are you going to address those needs? So the next part of IEP will be your goals and objectives. which would be you'll look at the needs and then you'll make a measurable goal to help basically keep you on track, because the student's going to do whatever you tell them to do. The goal is to keep you on track to make sure you are addressing that need, that specific need that's in the IEP. A quick question would be, okay, so is that all I'm gonna teach them? And of course, no, you're gonna teach them the regular curriculum. But during that support time, you're gonna specifically work on those goals. And I love it. And I'm gonna keep plugging my district. So I love it because, you know, they really allow the special education teacher to do what's best for the student. So if we feel that the student needs to sit in that classroom and we go in there and they can get support that way, then there's, hey, everybody's on board. If we feel we need to pull them for a little while to work on some of these goals to help benefit them in the general curriculum, hey, they're for that as well. So when we're looking at the IEP, it's specific and the goals are very specific as well.
And how often, Adrian, are goals updated? So I know they're updated annually, but beyond that, how do they grow and change with the student? And can, like, if I see something as a regular education teacher, if I see something that has to be added or changed, is that a voice that I can add to the chorus?
You know what, we would love that. If you got that going on in your school where the gen ed teachers coming to you with goal suggestions and good progress, hey, then you know you're on a good team.
Yeah,
right. That would be absolutely great. With IEP goals, of course, we do progress monitoring, where you're going to monitor every goal. But best practices is you're doing progress monitoring in every classroom. You know, that's best practices. You got to see where the kid is going, or if they're going in reverse. But goals can be changed once they're mastered, because there's always a requirement, a percentage. If you're noticing that the student is not going to meet the goal, of course, you will call the team together and either revamp the goal or change some of the strategies to reach the goal. But if you know the student has already mastered the goal, then you can change the goal. You can call IEP meeting anytime to adjust goals. But normally it's usually an annual review. In my district, we don't do all our annual reviews at one time. We do them based on their re-eval month and day. So we have annual reviews throughout the whole year. Did I answer that for you, Sarah? Those millions are just bringing it all out tonight.
I know, right? I'm just acting out. I know. It's just, these are the questions that I get all the time, and I know you do too.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's hard because this document is scary. It's scary when it lands on your desk and in your email inbox, and you're going, but wait, hold on. You know, and so you kind of flip ahead through to the accommodations page, which I know you're going to, and then you're like trying to make heads or tails of that.
Yeah. You know what's fun is when at the beginning of the year, especially we're speaking specifically for general ed teachers. What would be scary to me is at the beginning of the year, I get a folder from unknown source with a bunch of accommodations on kids I don't even know. Now that is scary, you know. I wouldn't recommend it. And then if we got enough time before the school year starts, I'm gonna have to go find who sent me this stuff, because you can tell me an accommodation, but if you don't tell me how to do it or how long to do it, are we weaning them off? One of my favorite accommodations, is oral administration and nothing else behind it. You know, student gets oral administration for all tests and quizzes. Okay. And that's all I get. That's all the teacher gets. So you can walk in a room and how to get an oral administration if the kid is sitting in there with other kids. You know, it's not specific. Some things are just, and we're in this day and age, you got to question. You want to question and make sure, first of all, you're not wasting your time, but also you're doing stuff with fidelity, which is right. So when you get to an IEP meeting, you don't have to fudge anything. You can tell them what you're actually doing. Now, the next section is the accommodation section. Now, I'm skipping some parts of the IEP. These are the main parts. Is the accommodation. This little picture I took, it should be in the folder, but what I put in the folder are actually more accommodations based on pretty much every subject area you can teach. But this is just a little picture of the snapshot just to really go with the slide. But the accommodations are basically used to kind of support the student in their weak area so they can at least access the curriculum. You know, we like to give students calculators who really don't know their timetables, you know, who don't know their facts, so who has trouble with division. Now, since I'll say use the calculator as an example, in math, you can have an accommodation for the calculator, but you still have to teach the kid the processes of equations, and you just want the calculator support 7 times 7, but you still want that student to do the standards of, because I'm almost certain in 6th grade math, we are definitely doing single equations. We're solving equations. So the calculator could be used to accommodate the fact that they don't know their facts, you know, they don't know them. Or in language arts, we have the fact of reading, reading comprehension. Some kids can comprehend it, can't read the words, you know? So having things read to you is just basically reading the words, but the actual skill is comprehending what you read. And that also goes along with accommodations. Do we have any questions about accommodations, or does anybody have any accommodations that they're using that they have no clue why the student is using these accommodations? If so, just let me know.
Well, okay, so that brings us to a kind of interesting spot, Adrienne. So what if a teacher is reading the accommodations page, and then, so of course you get the accommodations way before you ever meet the child, right? And so you have this idea in your head that they need seating that's a high back chair, and they need to be able to be located in a spot where they're basically in the corner of the room. Maybe that's like they have a physical accommodation. And so you set all this up, and then you meet the child and you go, I don't get it. No comprendo. So who would the teacher talk to find out, like, to get the backstory, you know? Because sometimes these accommodations land with this year's teacher, but we haven't been in a meeting yet to meet the parents and talk to and maybe even have the student in there, depending on what grade level we're talking about. And so I just wonder, like, what do those conversations go, what do they look like from a special ed point of view?
Well, if you're looking at, I won't even think about this. Let's think about the accommodation of note taking.
Yes, okay, that's great. Like, they need all notes have to be copied and delivered to the student. That's one of my favorite accommodations.
Have to be delivered to the student. Exactly.
With a red bow, yes.
Yeah, with a red bow, and also give them a highlighter.
Yes,
so
exactly
can,
right.
You know, put some yellow marks on it. The giving them notes to students, to me, goes back to a story where we used to give everybody oral administration on was it the PAC test? I think it was PAC. But we used to give them oral administration.
Yeah, this just turned into Throwback Thursday, y'all. We just brought up PAC.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, Adrienne, you just like totally dated both of us, because I remember PAC, sir.
I love PAC. We used to give them all grade level stuff in PAC. But like, we have PAC test. This is a true story, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people experience this, where we have oral administration. Everybody got it. If you had IEP, you got oral administration on your IEP. So you read the test to the students. So, you know, you got the test, you're reading, and I'm on number 2, they're on number 14. They're way ahead. They don't even need that accommodation. Note taking is almost the same way. I feel bad if I go out of my way to give notes to a student, and then, you know, you look in the hallway, the notes in the corner by the locker. They don't really need it. With accommodations, you really need to provide a a description of why that student needs that accommodation. So if I'm in Sarah's class and accommodation is she has to provide notes to the student. Now, if Sarah feels that that student doesn't need notes, we're going to look at, okay, where's the student at when they're taking the notes, and how were they before we were giving them the notes? If there's no difference, or if we notice that the student not even using the notes, that's collecting data. So when you go to that IEP meet, you can say, hey, boom, with this, I'm seeing this. And you come to a consensus. You talk to Elliot. Elliot's gonna come to a consensus, and they're gonna say, okay, we can't back this accommodation up with any data because the student not even using this accommodation. So that's how you do it. Like every member on the IEP team is important, and the general ed teacher, those are the kind of things that we would love to hear, because we wouldn't know any other way, because we're, if we're not inclusion, we're somewhere else and we're not with that student.
Yeah, and I can't emphasize and I can't overemphasize or overstate, the reality is that middle school is really in the middle when we're talking special education. So there are children, there are sixth graders who are entering who they've never been to one of their own IEP meetings, and you've got eighth graders who have been to several. And so they're well versed in the accommodations that they're receiving and ought to be receiving, and et cetera, right? And I know that a lot of times what happens is, I have conversations every single testing season with children who their IEP reads that they have to wear the headphones and they have to have oral accommodations on their test. And they look at me and say, what will happen if I refuse to put on the headphones? And every single conversation those go, I say, honey, I'm sorry, but today you got to put them on, because your team decided that is what you needed. And I'm sorry you feel that way, but I will get your case manager and we will reconvene the team. But today you got to wear the headphones because I don't look good in stripes.
Nope, you sure don't. And and then back to testing, yeah, you're gonna get the oral, which you're gonna listen to the CD, but then they also throw small group on there. But it's always best practices to have some kind of data to back it up. Like you said, sometimes it's frustrating to a general ed teacher to be providing accommodations that they know that student doesn't need. When we're talking about testing, it's like when they get the math portion of, let's go to eighth grade math. They get eighth grade math test. They're taking eighth grade math test, and 10 minutes later, they're halfway done with the test. Paper is blank, calculator is not even open. As a combination, you're supposed to use it, but if you have an accommodation, then throughout the year, you kind of should be using it throughout the year, so you know when to use it when not forced by the teacher, like literally forced. You'll be like, oh my goodness, he's not gonna open his calculator. We know how this story about the end. That goes through your mind. So as we move from, there's a lot of different services that we can provide our students through the IEP, and they have to be addressed in the IEP. My favorite, of course, is behavioral support services, because everybody needs some way to vent. You need, even teachers need support behavior wise as well, because that behavior problems will be is a trigger for a lot of people to say, hey, this kid needs some support. And you have to teach appropriate behavior, just like you have to teach any kind of lesson. When we look at an IEP and we call it your behavior support services, we're just going to call it how you function in that school. What supports we can provide to help you function better or appropriately at school. Special ed is a service, not a place. Behavior falls under that as well. You'll have great administrative teams who understand that. There's not a lot that don't understand it, though, if you think about it. But good administrative teams, they'll come and they'll say, okay, I know this student, and they can kind of spearhead a lot of the conversation on what they can do as a whole, because their job is the function of every student. So they can kind of spearhead, hey, we need to look at his schedule. We need to look at her schedule. I knew her from 6th grade. She didn't get along. She didn't do well in math first period. She did better last math when she went on, things like that. So those supports, that's a big support service. The rest, the top 4, somebody else gonna come in and really give those services. Adaptive PE, you'll mostly see that in elementary school, but sometimes in middle school, they'll have that in the IEP. But the speech, we call it OT, occupational therapy, and physical therapy, somebody else is gonna come in and actually work with that student, where they'll get the general ed teacher suggestions and some interventions and modifications, but they're mostly gonna work with that student on their own. And that's the services session. Every service you give that student has to be addressed in the IEP, and it's going to, like I said, that's an overview, but it's going to tell you how much of the service they're going to get, how many minutes that's going to come out of their general ed time, and it's going to be written out specifically at the IEP meetings, so that everybody's basically on the same page.
And Ms. Green wanted to add that data collection is so important. So when the team convenes, that information can be presented, because I think one thing that we can't overstate, and I said to her that I totally agree, we can't overstate the fact that nothing happens in a school building and then we can add the rest of it in an IEP for a student willy-nilly or on accident. So if we have services listed, if we have accommodations listed, they're there for a reason. And the execution of those services, the delivery of those accommodations is expected because they're there for a reason. So we have to implement with fidelity. We have to be intentional about what we do, because these young people, that is how they're going to access their education. So I absolutely agree. I just wanted to sort of yay, amen to Ms. Patrice there for about the importance of data collection, because we can't just say we have a feeling. A feeling is not sufficient. We have to have data to support us.
You're right. You can't make any decisions. And if we're talking about services, even to move a student from a more restrictive environment, you got to have data to support that as well. And another point of personal privilege. Hand Middle School has a beautiful campus. Let me go ahead and throw that out as well. It's such a beautiful campus. All right. So, like I said, frequency and duration, that's always going to be in the IEP. Anytime you see direct, then that's when someone is coming in there to provide those services. They're going to provide that service for you. All right, consent. Here's the good part of the IEP, the very end. What you will hear sometimes is, remember we talked about the LEA, the job of the LEA? And we say the LEA's job is to find a consensus. First of all, LEA's first job is make sure that everybody's following this IEP. That's their job. That's really their job. Make sure that IEP is being followed and is compliant and is within a year's frame. The other part is, after the meeting is over and we agree to disagree, sometimes you will hear somebody say, well, I'm not going to sign it because I don't agree with what's in the IEP. The signature page of the IEP is just saying that you were there. That's it. We have another document called the prior written notice, and that's where the team lead, who is taking notes of the entire meeting, they're going to say everything that's in the meeting. They're going to say, Sarah said there's no way in the world this kid can function. That's going to get put in the prior written notice. But the signature page is saying that you were at the meeting. That's all it is. It's not, you're not saying I agree with everything in the IEP. That's going to be put in the PWN. And to step off of that a little bit, if you don't agree with stuff in the IEP, it's your job to say it. If you don't agree with something, but be sure you can back it up. But it's your job to say, hey, I don't agree with that. I don't think this accommodate works in my class because, or If the team lead doesn't agree with something, they're writing the IEP. If they don't agree with something, then they will more than likely address it in a way that one way, and I'm a special ed teacher, of course. One way, if I don't agree with what I'm hearing from the general ed teacher, I don't agree with the parent, what they're saying, more than likely, I'll just ask you to explain, okay, what are you talking about? I won't say it like that. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then, because the IEP is a draft while we're in the meeting anyway. If we're in the meeting, it's a draft, so we can change anything before the end of the meeting, before we close out the meeting. We can change anything. So you just ask people, okay, why do you feel that way? What do you think? The parent could tell us stuff that we don't even know about the student. The general ed teacher could tell us, okay, when he's in my class and when she's in my class, other students in that same class are doing this. He or she is doing this, you know, if they can back things up. So when we get to this point of the IEP, it's in this phase. I always say sign, you know, you sign, you just say I was there at the meeting, because it does look good when you are attending the meeting because you feel like you got a voice. Sort of, it's not like, it's sort of like voting, but you're not voting on anything, but you're there. You're using your right. You are playing a key part in that student's life, because special education is a service, not a sentence. So we're not sentencing them to life and self-contained. We are going to sentence them to the supports they need so they can function in society once they get out of school.
And I think it's important also to talk about the importance of making sure the lines of communication are kept open between the special education department, whether that be just, you know, it could be anybody that is on this team. But the idea here is that I really feel like we shouldn't wait until the IEP convenes, until we have that team convening in a very formal way to say, hey, I have a concern, or hey, I have a question that I need clarity on. Like, we need to be able to talk to each other as professionals on the team and say, here's what I'm seeing. Because I can guarantee you that I do not want to be sitting across the table with an Adrian Goodman who's blindsided because he had no clue I was going to go and say something that I did. I'm sure that he would much rather be prepared for what he kind of anticipated that was going to come his way.
That is correct. And Adrian Goodman would just sit there and just nod his head. He's going to be totally professional. And say, remember, we are a team here. But that is a very good point. A very good point. So we're going to move past the signature page. Now, remember, the IEP is a legal document. And I'm dating myself again. I used to like night court. I really did. It was funny.
Yeah, you really did. You're dating yourself, man, big time for night court. I bet there's some people on here who don't remember night court. Actually, I don't know. Maybe there are a few that do. I don't know. Oh, goodness. I feel old right now. Thanks anyway.
Yeah, who does? I mean, I don't know. They still have night court, like literally. But the IEP is a legal document. So whatever's in the IEP, when it's signed and we done had the meeting and we got parental consent to even start the whole IEP, it's a legal document. You have to do what's in the IEP. If you don't agree, of course, you're going to get your facts together, your data together. But until y'all reconvene, you have to do what's written in that IEP. Even if a student comes into your school from another district, another state, whatever IEP they bring into that school, you have to honor it until you create another document that your district, in your district format. So the IEP is definitely a legal document, then you probably should treat it as such. If you got a really, 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 really good team lead, they will pretty much tell you what you need to do to be compliant with that IEP. But at the end of the day, if it's in front of you, then you really need to follow that document. And by law, everybody in the school, like, when you walk into a middle school, you are a 6th grader first, a 7th grader first, and an 8th grader. Everything else comes after that. You should have access to the curriculum. Last year when we were doing Thursday Thoughts, we were not fans of Master Connect. Like, we're just not fans of it. I'm a fan of it now, I've changed. I've seen the errors of my ways.
I was gonna say,
Um,
as soon as they broke the news that they were really accurate with their predictions on the SC Ready test, I became a fan, just like House there in your picture. I became a fan of the Lay Mastery Connect.
There you go. And we gave Master such a hard time last year, but it is. I like it. We can work with Master Connect, but every student should have access to the general curriculum. You should have access to it. I mean, even though that student may be functioning academically on a third grade level, let's not give them third grade material all day, every day. They should have access to and with inclusion, a big part of inclusion, not only does it keep you with your grade level peers, but it also builds your confidence. You know, if I'm a sixth grader, I need to be around other sixth graders to the maximum extent possible, you know, or if I'm an eighth grader, I really don't need to be going to sixth grade related arts. You know, I don't need to be eating with the sixth graders. I don't, and when I look at, if I do go out, because, you know, we love sending you out for science and social studies, because there's something that says you don't have a disability in science and social studies. I'm like, you got a disability in reading and math, so you need those skills in science and social studies. So yeah, so we'll throw you in science and social studies and say, oh, they'll be fine in that. You know, maybe on an individual basis, but access to the general curriculum is your right. It's your civil right. You should have access to whatever curriculum that you are in that grade. All right, do we have any questions before I go to the next slide? The next slide is going to be pretty fun. I think so.
Well, Ms. Patrice wanted to just simply say she wanted to thank you for emphasizing that the students are people first, general ed first, gen ed first, and then, you know, all of this comes after, that they're people and human beings and learners first.
See there, when you have great administrators like that, you
Whoop,
know,
whoop.
and inclusion works.
There you go, inclusion works.
Your kids, your students will get what they need. Scenarios. Scenario number one, you have a sixth grade student with a specific learning disability in reading comprehension and written expression. What can you use in your classroom to accommodate that student? Can we take 1 minute and somebody throw something in the chat? How does that sound? What is one way we can accommodate that student in your classroom? Now, reading comprehension is, you know, if you read something, can you tell me what you read? Written expression is, can you transfer what's in your head to some paper? Which is not all that easy. But let's take about a minute to kind of think of an accommodation. Because I guarantee you, I'm gonna give you two on the next slide. Hopefully we can kind of match up a little bit, but let's see. I think that's about a minute. Am I right? Let's see.
Not quite a minute, but I think some of the people on the call tonight are in transit, moving from place to place. So I know that might be an issue because we don't want anybody to get in a car accident. If you would prefer to unmute and shout it out, we can do that too, right? Adrian, that's okay?
You sure can.
Okay. If that's easier, you can just go ahead and unmute and shout out. What can we do for this child who has a disability in reading comprehension, learning disability in reading comprehension and written expression? What's something we can do to accommodate this child?
Let's see.
Everybody's gone silent, Adrian. It's just you and me.
Well,
I'm gonna start singing here in a minute. I got my minions. Like I'm not playing. Here we go.
Well, I'm gonna click the slide for the me and start singing. Here easy accommodations.
Okay.
What is that? What's the very first one?
Pre-written
Copy of
notes.
pre-written notes.
Notes. Famous last words, and then I gotta deliver it in a red bow and a highlighter, Adrian.
There you go. And then we got the use of technology. That computer and written expression, for some reason, it works wonders. they sit up there and type it, and sometimes most of it, you know, it will make sense because they text all the time. Most
Right.
of a majority of people text. So when they see it in a written, like on a computer screen, you get more out of them. So those are just two that I just threw out there. Of course, when I say copy of pre-written notes, that is if it's functioning for that student, if they're actually using it.
Yeah, we had a discussion. We had a discussion recently in a meeting, and a teacher said, you know, I'll give them the I want to do for the child. It was coming from a really great place in their heart. You know, they wanted to help the child. And I started poking around and asking, and it turned out that for that specific student, they really needed like the close notes that they could fill in instead of like completely pre-written. And because what they were doing was they were playing with the highlighter and drawing pictures and messing around because they didn't need all of that help. And so that was an example. And I said to her, I said, look, no one's in trouble, but we have to think about what we're doing. We can't be an enabler, because otherwise we're disabling the child. Like, we have to stretch them, and we want to still have them engage with us, which I think is really, really important. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. Those are great suggestions. Yeah. And you bring up a good point too. The computer's like this magic device. You hand them a Chromebook and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I can totally communicate. Really? Where did you come from? What planet did you, I mean, it's like from Chromebook Deluxe over here. No, I hear you.
I know you'd be disabling chats and everything. Hey,
I know, right? I could turn that off and go Guardian like nobody's business.
You're right. All right, so remember this PowerPoint, please use it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to skip the next two scenarios because we want to get out of here at 7. So scenario 2 and scenario 3, I will add this video for scenario 3. Is going to look at more so communication, and there's a video that goes along with that, and more accommodations. And once we get to this, also is another video. Y'all love this. Accommodation means we're going to add something, but it's also modification. That means we're going to actually change something in the curriculum to suit the needs of that child. Since we're only speaking about middle school, it's really not a big issue when you modify the curriculum. It becomes an enormous issue in high school because you can't get credit for that class. But for middle school purposes, it does not affect whether you pass the class or not. So we will get to, let's see. We're at the end. Now, Special Olympics, we love it. We love Special Olympics.
Yep.
I totally stole this quote for them. It says, let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. We got just enough time to hear one of the most powerful, think of your student. And let's cross our fingers and hope it plays.
Now, why would a slick little hustler like you want to sign up for this kind of abuse anyway? I want to fly jets, sir. My grandmama wants to fly jets. I wanted since I was a kid. I'm not talking about flying, I'm talking about character. I've changed, I've been here. Hell, you have. I've changed, sir. Just polished up your afternoon thing. You just shined it up. Tell me what I want to hear. I want your DOR. No, sir. I want your DOR. I ain't gonna quit. Spell it. DOR. I ain't gonna quit. Yeah, then you can be free. You and your daddy can get drunk and go home chasing together. Huh? No, sir. DOR. I ain't gonna quit. All right, then you can forget it. You're out. Don't you do it. Don't you. I got nowhere else to go. I got nowhere else to go.
Kind of think about that when we're having these meetings and placing our students. They don't have anywhere else to go. You know, I mean, the teacher, we'll have our problems, we'll need our support. But if we really look at that kid under all of them, because they're communicating with us, they really don't have anywhere else to go but our classroom. And to end it, we will say, like I said, special education is a service, not a sentence. Thank you, Sarah. This was
Thank
very
you.
wonderful.
Thank you so much, Adrian, for awesome. Guys, remember we set out and we said it should provide food for thought. This should be a reflective hour. I want to say thank you so much to Adrian for coming to share his time and expertise with us tonight. Thank you. I can't overstate that. Scamley thanks you. I thank you. You know, my final thought on today's session, that last clip kind of got me. I'm not going to lie. You know, we have an obligation. We have an obligation every single day when we come into our school buildings. And that obligation is to meet the needs of every single one of our students, not just the ones who are, you know, who their mom is the head of the PTSA, not just the ones who bring us chocolate on Fridays because we look like we need it, not just the select ones, but every single child. And guess what? We have to connect with every single one of them to meet them where they are, to understand what their needs are, and we have an obligation to do that. And not only do we have an obligation to our students to do that, but we have an obligation to their families to do that. So I leave you with that final thought. I know it's kind of heavy, but I think it's really important. And I think we said some really important things here tonight. I want to say thank you, of course, to SCAMLE for their continued support of these webinars. And I also want to direct you to www.scamle.org for all the latest and greatest news about what's going on with SCAMLE. And remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all the spots. And because we want to know what the latest is that's going on. Next week's webinar focuses on ELA instruction. So if you have, if you've got some friends or colleagues you think could benefit from an hour of a little bit of a reflection around best practice in ELA, and they get to hear from some really cool ELA teachers, myself not excluded, I'll be there. I'm looking forward to it. So if you happen to know any colleagues, please encourage them to sign up. These sessions, like I said, are recorded for our membership. However, live is always better. So make sure that that you share these opportunities with your friends and colleagues. May you all have a very safe and joyful rest of your week. We're almost there, y'all. It was a short week, but why is it the short weeks always feel so long? Nevertheless, want to say thank you all for coming. And if remember, don't be a stranger. Please be sure to fill out the feedback form that was dropped into the chat. Don't leave before you do that. Remember that your completion of the feedback form will ensure that you get your certificate for participation tonight. Thank you all so much. Be well.